Hello, America, and to our friends around the world, greetings. I bring to you today a video clip of Maryland Governor Wes Moore addressing what I presume to be the Maryland legislature, advancing the idea that men and boys in particular are being left behind. This is an epidemic that is being ignored by people in power in all walks of life. You have individuals on Twitter, for example, Bill Corbett, who is constantly trying to draw attention to the fact that there are thousands of women and girls abuse shelters that receive government funding, but none. Well, let me if I recall correctly, there might be one in the entire United States for men. And this has been absolutely documented. I've provided evidence of that in the last couple days, as well as in the last year, of various cases of women being given no sentences or probation or minimal sentences after committing all forms of violence, up and including murder of others, in particular, men and boys. A man in Illinois died for refusing to kiss a woman. She was so incensed that somebody would reject her that she murdered him. You have a judge who spared a woman in, I believe, California who was on a drug frenzy. It was marijuana. I mean, let's get real. What kind of drug frenzy is that? She stabbed the man that she was having sex with 27 times, if I recall correctly, and she received no sentence. You have the mother who was, you know, charges dismissed because she thought the underage boy was 16 when it turned out he was 14. She needs to be in prison. And let's not forget, as I'm always drawing attention to it, the weekly, you can't go a week without a news headline of a woman raping one of her students. The GOP, the Republican Party, is fully complicit uh, in abetting and covering up these vile and disgusting acts. In addition to that, you've got rampant runaway paternity fraud, that women are not being held accountable for lying and duping men into financially supporting children that aren't theirs. Those women need to be locked up. Each of them are a pariah on society. They have successfully weaponized the legal system, the community, local law enforcement, media, professional associations, families against their target. You have women such as Angela Uramova, who in May didn't even like the appearance of a man and made a false allegation, which caused him to be locked up for more than a month. Deprivation of rights. And what is her sentence? We won't know until April of this year, but it's recommended that she gets probation, just like Melody Johnson, who spent months poisoning her husband's coffee. Why? Because he wanted to divorce her crazy ass because she wanted the money, the insurance money. So before I get too caught off with it, I wanted to give a synopsis as to the reason that this might be the plank that saves the Democrat Party from being irrelevant.
Investing in our people means following the data. And the data is telling us that we need to have a greater statewide focus on supporting and elevating our men and boys. It's not just that in Maryland, labor force participation for young men is nearly the lowest that we've seen in 2 decades. It's also that suicide rates amongst men under 30 have been up by more than a third since 2010. Across the country, college attainment levels are now the same as they were for men and boys as they were in 1964.
To put it in perspective, this isn't just one man attempting to use this as leverage. This is a movement that is gaining more prominent voices, but hasn't found a home. You have Chris Williamson, who does his uh, YouTube podcast where he interviews people. I'm not certain if his is the Chris Williamson podcast or Diary of a CEO, but if you type it in, you'll find him on X and YouTube interviewing people, and he'll have people on there and ask questions, whether it's about professionalism, about male female dynamics, a whole wide range of things. But he posts on X, Twitter, on February 5, yesterday, men aren't seen as having problems, but as being the problem. Read it again. Men aren't seen as having problems, but as being the problem. And then go back to that first 50 seconds of Governor Moore addressing multiple issues that boys and men are facing: plummeting education rates, escalating self deletion rates. Chris goes on to say suicide rates among men under 30 have risen by 40% since 2010. It's presently 2015. In 15 years, you've seen a 40% increase. In what other area of society would you see a devastation of 40% being ignored? You've got morons out there trying to keep cows from farting, poisoning your food. You've got jab initiatives to protect 0.3% of the population while rendering a significant portion useless in some capacity or another. He goes on, male suicide accounts for as many deaths as breast cancer. Men are less likely than women to go to college or buy a house. They are more likely to be lonely and are more vulnerable to addiction. Young white men from lower income homes are worse off than their fathers on almost every economic and social indicator. There is a bigger gender gap on campuses today than in 1972 when the government passed Title IX to prevent sex based discrimination in education. But today, the disparities in college enrollment and performance are the other way around. Rollo Tomasi has cited multiple times that women are exceeding men in graduation in just graduating college, and they are outpacing men in enrolling in advanced college degrees: medicine, law, psychiatry. Imagine being a man in a world that is dominated by women that have no agenda other than to promote other women. This is untenable. It is unsustainable. And if the Democrats need a plank to stand on, they'd best be rallying amongst or behind Governor Moore, because the GOP is ignoring this and they're doing it at their own. If the GOP continues to, I made a post about International Men's Day, and Oregon GOP said both men and women. Equivocating doesn't help. We need somebody who's actually going to walk the walk instead of give us equivocating nonsense BS
Guys, the data
talk.
is telling us a clear message. We need to better understand and address what is happening with our men and boys. Now, I want to be clear. This administration remains steadfast in our support of all Marylanders, regardless of their gender or their background. And as a father of both a son and a daughter, I want both of my children to grow up with all of their God-honoring and God-given opportunities. But if we want to truly unleash the power of Maryland's labor force, we need to make sure that our men and boys are all right and that our men and boys are not continuing to fall behind.
If the GOP wants to maintain its wins, they have to seriously address issues such as this. Otherwise, the Democrats are going to be successful in making this a plank. Governor Moore, we're watching you. If you can deliver, you're going to get the votes.